First, I now like to answer some questions of friends of mine who saw the previous film interview of April 22, 2012 in my studio. They told me that I was not very clear about my first contacts with the sculptor Shinkichi Tajiri in the late 50s. I have to say something first to clear up this point to avoid misunderstanding. Although it's quite some time ago, those roaring 50s, just after the war, this matter is that I have to recollect everything from memory. But I like to talk about him, as he was probably the first sculptor making junk sculptures or one-day sculptures on the banks of the Seine in Paris, where the junk heaps of Paris are located. First of all, I arrived in Amsterdam as a university student in September 1955. After I stayed a long holidays in Paris, where I had seen in Maison de la Pensée Française the retrospective Picasso exhibition, combined with his latest Sylvette ponytail portraits. This was an overwhelming experience for me. Tajiri moved from Paris to Amsterdam in 1956 with his wife Ferdi, who already has established some contacts with various Cobra artists, formerly called the Experimental Group. In those days, I did not have much admiration for the Cobra painters. I preferred Klee, Miro, Max Ernst, and above all, Pablo Picasso. In the same year, Sandberg, director of the Stedelijk Museum, succeeded to organize the famous Guernica exhibition in his museum, displaying Picasso's masterpiece, and I was almost daily over there to see, to look at, to drink the large painting, but above all, the drawings and oil sketches, and beside that, there was Julio González, masterpiece Montserrat. In 1957, Shinkichi Tajiri, Wessel Kozijn, and Karel Visser had a group exhibition in Kasteel Hofwijk in Voorburg, near The Hague, which was quite an eye-opener to me. The years 1954 up to 1960 have been for me the formative years. Where and when I have met Shinkichi for the first time is not exactly clear to me. I think it was Jan Wolkers, sculptor as yet, who urged me to see him in 1957. So I did. I paid him a visit in the Valkenburger Straat in his studio. There he worked with Ferdi and lived with their two kids. The years 1958 until 1960 were full of inspiration. Occasionally I assisted Shinkichi and Ferdi on iron sculptures, and I learned a lot. There was a rather peculiar friendship between the two of us. Tajiri was an American-born Japanese, and after the brutal attack of the Imperial Japanese Army on Pearl Harbor, he was an internee in Arizona. Later, he saw himself metamorphosized after intensive commando training as a kind of kamikaze soldier in Italy, where he was wounded. In the same time, I was, much younger than he, a Civil War victim of the same Japanese army, deported and locked up behind bars in one of the notorious concentration camps in Jakarta on Java. Anyway, there was much mutual respect, and we could laugh and have fun about it and enjoy each other's creative inventiveness. That's, in short, how it was. I like to refer now, well, this is the sculpture exhibition talk mentioned by me before the opening of this sculpture exhibition. I like to refer now to some actual points, better to say, to consequences of the economic crisis and how this has serious effects on cultural productions in general and particularly on fine arts. Commenting on the effects of the crisis, the Dutch morning paper The Volkskrant wrote April 19, 2012, quote, "Too few top artists, full stop, subsidies of the government did not produce top artists in the Netherlands. The governmental subsidies for art have been raised substantially, but the number of top artists has declined dramatically," unquote. So subsidies are linked to decline of quality. The lately deceased philosopher and friend of mine, Professor Frits Staal, in his book over zin en onzin in filosofie en religie en wetenschap, edited by Meulenhof, Amsterdam 1986. Introduction, page 29, he writes, it's my translation, quote, "The reverse side of the freedom of the artist and philosopher results in polyinterpretability. That's why there is so much bungling, dabbling, trifling and balderdash in art and philosophy. You can see that art and philosophy, but not in mathematics or in other so-called sciences. The value of philosophy and art is that both are commenting, criticizing and charging society," unquote. I think Staal has hit the right nail on the head. For instance, I would like to remind the famous painter Velázquez, the way he used to paint the cardinals and kings, the upper ten of his days, with a lot of irony and bittersweet humor, almost caricaturizing them. Art is subversive. Anyway, it should be subversive. Subsequently, fine arts should not be subsidized because it is losing its freedom. No wonder that sky-high subsidies do not produce top artists. How can one criticize or attack a system you are dependent on? Our government recently has qualified art as a hobby. Since when a male or female artist has to pay taxes for his or her hobby? So, artists, cherish your liberty, be subversive, and use your humor. On my Scrapyard Art, I have given you extensive information on my invites. There is still one question to be answered. What is it? What does it mean? Well, I would say it is what it is. Perhaps it is just the modern equivalent, the counterpart of the 16th century painter Arcimboldo, who painted heads, faces, assembled of fruit, vegetables, flowers, even books, and he called them teste composte, assembled heads. I do exactly the same, assemblages of ready-mades. Exactly what Tajiri made in Paris, his junk sculptures, and even Picasso with the head of his baboon and young. What I like, the way I work with scrap material, is in fact that the final product, my sculpture, is an artificial entity too. My pieces are artifacts. They are mirroring, commenting, ironizing, yes, even ridiculizing reality. Look and see. Don't try to understand them. They do not answer. They are alone. You can complete them. Your look is supplementary. For me, the pleasure is in the making. that gives a tremendous satisfaction. And the artist should remain the maker, not the connoisseur of the work. Leave that to the public, to the art historians and art dealers. But most of all, I leave it to you. Thank you very much.